through Christmas.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're wise.
Most of them in a long time.
Yeah, they are good.
Yeah, they are gonna take the seat. Just so you know.
Garrett.
Is that good? See?
She said the legible one, but I don't have it right in front of me. That copy. This is the English translation. So it doesn't read.
What page is it?
It's not a page.
Right there, page 12 or 16. Page 12 or 16.
See, that's finished.
Ready? I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have a large crowd tonight, and we have a business meeting to take care of, and I need all of your cooperation tonight so we can hear, and everybody can hear what everybody else is saying, and that means we don't talk while others are talking. I move to the first item of business, which is the approval of minutes of January 8, 2018. We're in session. Please. Let us, we can get through this quickly. There's a lot of people here. I know you want to speak. We need to make time for you to do that. And let's not drag this on beyond what we need to do. Do I hear a motion on the January 8, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting?
Make a motion to approve this.
All right.
I'll second it.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll, please.
Ken Sawyer,
Aye.
George North,
Aye.
Tony Mitchell,
Aye.
Shane Grooms,
Abstain.
Alan Dixon,
Aye.
Vance Mellis.
Aye. Next order of business, approval of the minutes of the February 12, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, George. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Shane? Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll, please.
Vance Mellis,
Aye.
Alan Dixon,
Aye.
Shane Grooms, Tony Mitchell,
Aye.
George North,
Aye.
Ken Sawyer.
Aye.
Next order of business is citizen participation. We have, by my count, 2 or 3 public hearings that we're going to have in just a minute. If anybody has something they want to say to us, other than something about those public hearings, which everybody will have an opportunity that wants to speak can speak, come forward now and tell me who you are and what you want to say. Okay, we'll move on to the next item of business. We have no old business, so we move into new business. The first item is RCN 18-001, a public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 12.92 acres located at 6518 West Farm Road 148 from agricultural AG to general commercial C3. Let me explain how the process will work. It'll work on each one of the public hearings that we have the same way. I'm opening this public hearing. Anybody that wishes to talk from the community, come up, tell us your name, sign in, and then tell us what you need to tell us. And then we'll move to the next person until we exhaust all the people that wish to talk about that particular issue. Once that's over, I'm going to close that public hearing, and we will immediately discuss the issues here and take whatever action is appropriate by the commission. So, with that in mind, anyone that wishes to speak on this public hearing, first, I want Garrett to explain, give a brief overview of it, and then I'll call for people to come.
This public hearing concerns the rezone of 12 acres of a larger 30-acre tract located at the southeast corner of State Highway MM and West Farm Road 148. The address of this parcel is 6518 West Farm Road 148. The application is to change the zoning classification from agricultural to general commercial C3. A list of land uses that are permitted in the C3 zoning district are included in your packets.
Does anyone wish to speak on this zoning? Tough night. Not getting anybody coming forward. Okay, I'm going to close off that hearing and move to discussion of this. Go ahead. Garrett.
I'll provide some more detailed analysis from the staff exhibit that was prepared for you. Again, this is 12 acres of a larger 30-acre parcel located at the intersection of State Highway MM and West Farm Road 148, both of which are arterial class thoroughfares here in the city, or planned arterial class thoroughfares. State Highway MM is a primary arterial. West Farm Road 148 is a planned secondary arterial. Given that this site is located at that intersection, it is considered generally appropriate for clustered commercial development given the volumes of traffic that are expected in that area. The general trend of development in close proximity to this site has been toward higher intensity commercial uses as well as industrial uses. The compatibility with surrounding uses component. Currently across State Highway MM there is already existing high intensity commercial and industrial development located on the east side of MM are some agricultural and residential uses located at the same corner. There's also a church located to the south. The city's current land use plan does recommend local commercial use in the future for this particular site, but given the general trend of development in the location at two arterial class thoroughfares, staff still believes that it is appropriate for a higher intensity commercial use, particularly considering how the development trend has progressed over the years in this general area. Currently, it does have sort of a rural residential type of use there. Any uses that are presently contained within the property will be allowed to lawfully continue until such time as the site is redeveloped or until such time that that property is destroyed or abandoned. They will not be allowed to enlarge that use or expand that use in any way if the rezone is successful. Staff's analysis of this, we consider this to be partially consistent with the comprehensive plan. I say partially consistent in that we have a land use plan, and a part of that land use plan is a future land use map. That future land use map does say that this is most appropriate for a local commercial type of development. However, the plan taken as a whole clearly recommends that uses of this nature should be clustered together at the intersection of arterial thoroughfares, which is exactly what you have here. Other high-intensity commercial and industrial uses all clustered together at this area. So that being the case, we said it is partially consistent with the comprehensive plan, generally consistent with the trend of development in close proximity. It is able to be adequately served by municipal facilities in the area. I should point out here that this site does not enjoy immediate access to municipal water and sanitary sewer services. Those services will have to be extended by main extensions to this property, and that responsibility for making those main extensions will be on the developer. But if extended that short distance, there is adequate capacity there to serve the types of land uses that would be permitted in the general commercial C3 zoning district. So we consider to be able to be adequately served. All these things being considered, staff does recommend approval of this application.
Questions?
With the sinkhole area that's right in the back of the property, will that impact if it is not approved through a geology survey? Will that impact whether they can put any commercial structures on it at all?
They will not be permitted to put any commercial structures within 30 feet of the rim of that sinkhole. The city's regulations require a 30-foot vegetative buffer around any sinkhole rim to provide provide some filtration and water quality as well as to prevent any sort of structural hazards.
And they couldn't use it as a retention basin.
That's right. You're also not allowed to discharge stormwater directly into a sinkhole.
The water and sewer is on the opposite side of MEM, correct?
Correct.
So they'd have to go, you have to go underneath, or is it on the same side when you get closer to the intersection?
I don't. Yeah, there may be water further south. There is some water and a force sanitary main further to the south, but I don't know that that's where the connection will be made, but that would have to be determined through engineering.
That's on the development.
Correct. The city does not presently have any planned or programmed capital improvements to extend that infrastructure.
Questions or motions?
The owner at the present time doesn't have any particular thing that they're looking to put on there. Is that what I'm understanding? They're just trying to get it zoned for sale.
Can you recall what the application stated?
The application from the owners on Branco has applied for it on behalf of the owner. So they are a firm that's looking to locate this property.
Okay, so they are looking. Okay.
Yes.
From what my understanding is, I would describe it as a construction support type of land use, which would be permitted in this zone.
All right, I'll make a motion. Everybody, for the vote, possible recommendation to approve an application to change the zoning classification approximately 12.92 acres located at 6518 West Farm Road 148 from agriculture AG to general commercial C3.
The motion was to recommend approval.
Yes.
Fair second? Second. George, any discussion on the motion? Call the roll.
Ken Sawyer,
Aye.
George North,
Aye.
Tony Mitchell.
Aye.
Shane Green. Alan Dixon. Ransom Ellis.
Aye. Carries. Go to our next item of new business, RZN 18-002, public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 2.5 acres located at 649 East Elm Street from medium-density single-family residential R1M to local commercial C1. Garrett?
The location of this site is on East Elm Street, which is an arterial thoroughfare here in the city of Republic. It is a secondary arterial. It is located in close proximity to the intersection of Elm and U.S. Highway 60, U.S. Highway 60 being a primary class arterial thoroughfare here in the city. And as we discussed with the last rezone item, our current land use plan generally considers those intersections to be appropriate for the clustering of commercial uses. At this particular site, which you have surrounding the subject property, which is 2.5 acres, presently containing a single-family residence and located in the medium-density single-family residential zone, what you have surrounding it is a mixture of medium-density single-family residential uses as well as local commercial uses closer to the highway. Directly behind this parcel is an institutional use, which is the U.S. Post Office. The frontage and transportation traffic access to the site would come from East Elm Street. The city does have, the site is presently served by municipal water and sanitary sewer services, which are of a capacity to serve local commercial types of land uses, those land uses that would be permitted if this rezone is successful. There are certain types of those uses that, depending on the type of development that would occur, the type of building, and the type of construction materials used to be that building, where fire protection may be an issue in order to get enough fire flow. However, the city is currently about to begin some capital improvements in this area that we believe will help that fire flow issue and will eliminate that concern, or at least alleviate that concern. So we do believe that the municipal utilities there have a capacity to serve local commercial types of land uses. The residential use on the property will be allowed to, if the rezone is successful, will be allowed to lawfully continue, just like last time, until such time that the site is redeveloped or that residential use is abandoned for 12 months or longer. Of course, they would also not be allowed to enlarge or expand that use if the rezone were successful. You could just continue to use it as it is now until such time that it is redeveloped. Again, this is a similar situation as we had with the first hearing tonight, where although the land use plan generally considers locations like this to be appropriate for clustered commercial development, the future land use map that applies to this particular parcel recommends low-density residential uses. I imagine that's because there are low-density residential uses located in close proximity here. The application to rezone to local commercial would rezone it to the commercial zoning district that would be most appropriate to be located next to other residential uses, which would be the case here. So of all the commercial districts, this is the most appropriate one to be located next to residential uses. And again, the close proximity to that intersection of two arterials does make it a good candidate for commercial use. The trend of development, of course, in this area has been towards commercial uses, both general and local, given the amount of traffic volume that is carried by US Highway 60. So staff it recommends that this particular application is partially consistent with the comprehensive plan, generally consistent with the trend of development in close proximity, generally compatible with surrounding land uses, able to be adequately served by municipal infrastructure, and all this being considered, staff recommends approval of this application.
Does anyone wish to speak on this? Come forward and give us your name, sign in, and give us your name.
I'm Linda Lanning. I'm one of the co-applicants for this application. Hold on. Let me write my name legibly. On behalf of my brothers and sister, just want to speak a little bit about our decision to try to have this piece of property rezoned to commercial. It hasn't been an easy decision for us. This was our family home. Our grandfather owned all of the property east of Highway 60. It was apple orchards, peach orchards, grape vineyards. As you know, what's east of Highway 60 now, there are none of those left. It's all housing. And has started to become commercial along the highway. The house that we lived in when I was born is now the family video. The house across the highway was my aunt and uncle's house. It's now a bank. Our neighbors to the west of us, beautiful apple orchards and flower gardens in their land. It's the Taco Bell. So, times change. And the city of Republic continues to change. It was a town of 1,000 people when I was growing up. It's a little bit more than that now. And the needs of the town as it has changed, it needs more businesses and services. This is a very good sized piece of property, 2.5 acres, very good location, as you've said, just off Highway 60. If the land could be used for business and could provide services and jobs for the city of Republic, we would be very happy for that use to be made. I know our parents would be very proud to be able to support the city that was their home. We were looking at it and said, originally the land was a family business. It was apple orchards that provided the income for my mother's family. We made it residential. We think maybe it is time to be turned back into commercial use so that businesses can provide jobs and income for the city. If the city decides that this would be a good use for the property, we would be very happy to have that zoning done.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name's Patty Seaton. I live at 674 East Harrison. and I'm here for the neighbors that are going to connect to the property. We just have a few concerns. Of course, noise and lighting. We're always concerned about that. We have more lighting in our backyard from other businesses than they probably have on their own. I think they're directed the wrong way. But our major concern is Rogers Street connecting to that property. If you look at your map, you see there's just we live on an acre lot, and there's just about 8 houses away from the new commercial area. So we just are concerned that they will try to put a street through our backyard. So that's about all our complaint is, really.
Oh, from way up on Rogers Way.
Way up, yeah.
Way, is that east?
Yes, it is. And that's really our concern, is not having a street run through our backyards. So,
I understand.
okay,
Anything else, ma'am?
no,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Sorry.
My name is Mitch Long. I live at 670 East Elm Street, which is will be kind of catty-cornered from where they want to rezone this. This property goes quite a ways on into the residential neighborhood. In fact, it goes past the first street of Peachtree, where there are a ton of kids that come down the street after school. My concerns would deal with the extra traffic because they have to enter into this commercial rezoning from Elm Street. And, you know, there's so much traffic on Elm Street now, adding to it would be obviously worse. The other thing is noise. You know, with it's going quite a bit deeper into the residential lots, as I said, and all the houses surrounding it all have children. A lot of them back home from school. So those are my concerns. Not to mention, I'm not sure what it will do to my property value. I've actually lived in that house since I was 5. I bought it from my mom and dad and moved away 3 years, and I'm back in it. So I've been there almost 50 years. A lot of changes, but that's the way it goes. You know, you expect both sides of the highway to at least take in a lot on each side, but this is going considerably more into the residential area. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? See nobody moving toward the podium and no one raising their hand, so I want to close out that hearing. We can now discuss it. What about Rogers Street?
We do not have any plans to extend Rogers Street. It's not on our major thoroughfare plan to extend Rogers Street.
Is that an old alley that was running behind those? What is it?
No, it appears to have lots running on it, so it's a legitimate dead end public street, correct?
Apparently there's some smaller lots here. Does the property in question here, do we have the center turn lane? And I realize if they put something in there, they'll have to put that in there, but is there a center turn lane in there at the present time? How far does that center turn lane go?
It does not extend all the way to this property.
It just stops at Taco Bell. I mean, I've seen it, I've been there lots of times, but okay. So that will have to be, probably have a center turn lane extended on up through there, won't it?
Depending on the volume of traffic projected to be generated by whatever's going to go there, that would necessitate what type of improvement and the degree of that improvement that would be necessary.
Okay. Is there, I'm sorry, well, is there sidewalks? Where we have sidewalks at? Okay. Where do you have sidewalks at?
That is a good question. looks like there are sidewalks on the south side of Elm. I don't see them on the north side. Yeah, they do go east of East Street. Yep. East of East Street. Looks like they do.
Where's the gentleman that was just speaking? Oh, he's back there. How far do the sidewalks go down Elm Street, and are they on both sides? You live there. Are they on your side?
Yeah.
Okay, and how far past your lot do they go?
All the way to the four-way stop on Land.
They go all the way to Land Street. They start right there at Peachtree.
Okay.
From,
You may not have been able to hear what we were talking about. We were trying to figure out where the sidewalks were. I have another question for you. The kids that are coming down through there, are they walkers from school, or do they get dropped off by a bus, or what's the deal?
no, most of them are walk from school. The buses will actually come and turn the corner on Peachtree, so the kids will walk both directions from there. But it does stop on Elm Street. There are several stops down through there,
Okay.
but the buses do stop. The people right next to me and across the street both have 4 kids. And there's going to be a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and more of them are walking. And this can range from upper elementary school to some high school.
Sure. K-12.
I'd like a clarification on what you said there. Is the bus dropping them off here at like Peachtree, and then they walk on to the various places, or are they crossing 60 highway there to get? I mean, what are you saying? Or there's both? I presume there's some both.
There's both. There's multiple buses that come down Elm Street, and the one that turns and delivers kids on Peachtree actually turns on Peachtree.
But the kids get off there. They're not having to cross over 60 or anything like that. They're actually being dropped off.
The bus is very good crossing. Now, coming from the other way, kids that are just catty corner would be just east of Meeting One House across the street. The buses do stop right there, but it's close to the front of their house, so it's not.
But there is bus service there for most of them in that area. At least drop off at a central place and then go on to their houses. Okay.
We don't have any idea what the traffic flow is there.
Not without knowing the specific user. So,
Why don't you talk to us about what uses that could be made?
Most of the uses permitted in the local commercial zoning district are going to be low intensity type of commercial uses, retail, restaurants, offices, bakeries, things of that nature, things that you would expect to generate as far as commercial uses go, lower amounts of those sort of externalities that might negatively impact a neighboring residence. Not to say that there aren't impacts, but this is the zoning district that is designed to permit those uses that would have the lowest amount of impact. So these are not uses that would permit things. The general commercial district is where you have auto sales, auto body shops, uses that would permit more types of outdoor storage, uses that are more likely to have heavy equipment or large amounts of freight traffic potentially coming or going. Most of the traffic from a local commercial use is going to be patron traffic.
Are we talking Taco Bell-like?
Yes. Yep.
You could have a drive-through
Correct.
or such.
Gas
Or it
station.
could be a hair place or a nail place. I know those are back up slightly on Elm. There's a nail place and there's a hair place. And there's the video place.
Could be a dentist. Could be a variety of different. A lot of the development that you see that characterizes U.S. Highway 60, a lot of that would be permitted in local commercial district.
Time for you to say something that has passed, but I'm giving you a pass, so tell me what you want to say.
Well, the other question I would have, and I wasn't clear until you just said about what type of businesses might go in there. But I guess the other thing that would be a concern is these businesses can stay open so well into the night too. If it could be a restaurant or anything else, so they could be getting deliveries and all that stuff.
Yeah, there would,
It's not an 8 to 5. We can't, as a commission, we can't say you can only use this for a store that stays open 8 to 5. We have general zoning, and in that general zoning parameters that certain uses are allowed. That's what Garrett was talking about. So I think you've heard it can be various things, and it can be some that even have less impact, some that have more impact on the issues that you
it's just not possible to eliminate all of the incompatibility between the commercial use and a neighboring residential use. So for that reason, our codes require buffering between commercial development and residential development. So any commercial development on this site would be required to install a screen between their property and an adjoining residential property, that screen consisting of a fence and tree plantings. That's designed to help with visual impact and also noise impact. If you're across the street, there's not obviously a screen that's required to separate, but if there's a parking lot that fronts on the public street and there's a residential use directly across, they have to install a parking lot screen with some sort of fence, berm, or wall that's at least high enough to sort of prevent vehicle lights in the evening from shining on the residential. It's not a perfect system, but it's designed to sort of deal with some of those incompatibilities that are just going to happen from time to time.
The property to the east of this on Elm, that would be on the opposite side from that gentleman's house. The larger lots, these are all low density, and these are all residential.
Correct.
So R1 is
All single family.
okay. R1
They're all in the R1M district.
M, okay, and across the street, these would be higher density
Those
residential.
are also in the R1M district.
Okay.
I'll make a recommendation for the vote to recommend the approval of a application to change the zoning classification approximately 2.5 acres located at 649 East Elm Street from medium density single family resident R1-M to local commercial C1.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll.
Brent Smelis,
Nay.
Alan Dixon,
Nay.
Shane Grooms, Tony Mitchell, George North,
Aye.
Ken Sawyer.
Nay. No.
All right, you have your answer. Move to the next item of business. It's my understanding that PDD 06-012 has been withdrawn. Not withdrawn, but
They would like for it to be tabled and taken.
tabled. Thank you. So we'll move to the final order of business. Oh, okay. I need a motion on that. Table PDD 06-012. Got it? Alan, got it. Discussion on the motion? Call the
Ken Sawyer,
Aye.
George North,
Aye.
Tony Mitchell, Shane Grooms, Alan Dixon, Brent Smelis.
Aye. Final public hearing, PDD 18-001. public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of the trails at Valley Park Land Development District. Garrett?
This application pertains to a proposal to rezone 2 tracts of land totaling 66 acres from the R1M, which is an abbreviation for Medium Density Single Family Zoning District, into a Planned Development District. That Planned Development District is called Valley Trails, and within that development plan, it would permit the development of single-family residential homes at a density no greater than 2.7 units per acre, which would be a density very consistent with the same zoning district that it is in now. The Planned Development District also allows for some varied setbacks that are slightly less than would be conventionally permitted in the R1M zoning district, a little bit of a narrower lot than would otherwise be permitted, as well as private streets for most of it, the development of, or the continuation of a collector class thoroughfare through the site to connect to Lynn Avenue. All the streets and stormwater will be privately owned and maintained. The entire development also includes pedestrian facilities located on both sides of all streets.
First question I have for the audience is how many people have signed up to talk on this? Just hold your hand up. All right, well, how many people, I'm sorry? Yeah, okay, well, how many people want to talk on it? Okay. Let's just do it this way. I'm just, whoever has their hand up first here in a second can come forward and talk. And I'd appreciate it if you know, I have a feeling that we're going to hear some of the same things over and over again. So generally in these, and I'm not saying that's the issue here, but we have traffic issues, you have water issues, or you have noise issues, or you have light issues. We've already heard some of that tonight. But that doesn't mean they're incorrect. I'm just saying we hear that a lot. We get it. So once it's been mentioned a couple of times, unless you have a specific issue on it, just pass on it and give us your thought. If it's just I don't want it or I want it, whatever. So we can move through these as quickly as possible. I give everybody a reasonable period of time, but if you drone on, I personally don't want to be here at 10 o'clock tonight. And I don't think you all do either. So who wants to go first? I've got a tablet back there. You're going first.
Sure, I'll go first. I'm Donald Hancock. I represent the group that's making the proposal. If I may, can I slide over the easel there so that everyone might have a good look at what we've got going on? Excuse me, sir. I'll just
We all have maps. If you want to talk to, well, I guess we need to know. So
everybody has.
Go ahead.
Everybody has a copy. Paper.
Maybe that's I know you ran out of copies.
You may face it toward the audience. I think everybody.
We have maps here.
Okay, then I'll face it toward the audience. I think maybe we ran out of those. Okay, as I mentioned, I'm Donald Hancock, and I'll try to be brief and not drone on here. Anyway, our group has basically acquired the 66 acres that are south and west of the existing Valley Park subdivision. And our plan that we're proposing is to create 2, what we're referring to as pedestrian neighborhoods, one to the south and then one to the west of Valley Park. Each one of those neighborhoods would be a gated neighborhood, and the basis for that is that, well, being the father of some young kids, we're all concerned about distracted drivers, and one of the things that we want to try to have as a main element of these subdivisions would be kind of the throttling back of the through traffic, if you will. And so that's the basis for the gated aspect. The reason that we have applied for a PD or rezoning of any sort is due to the fact that the product that we're trying to bring to the market, we've got varied lot sizes, and that's truly the main reason for this proposal and why we're having to go through this exercise. Whenever I say we've got varied lot sizes in the south neighborhood or phases 1 and 2, we have a cul-de-sac that's proposed there, and again, these are smaller lots than the rest of the subdivision. But as you look at how everything averages out, our density on the tract as a whole is still within reason for the medium density, which I think it's zoned for now. Our purpose there is for folks that want to have less yard to mow, but not anything lesser in terms of the quality of the home. So it would be of like quality, so the price per square foot would be maintained across the whole development. And I guess as a side note, we could choose to do a lot of projects in a lot of different places. For me, this is a nice opportunity because I grew up here, K through 12, and some of the things that I want to, as we exhibited this at the home show, of course on a conceptual basis, but we also had, and we can pass these around, but these are wayfinding maps that just essentially locate the property in reference to, various things like downtown Springfield, Highway 65, the airport, just really giving an idea of, where this is in Republic, but then, how close this is to all those things. Of course, it's uniquely positioned close to the Civic Center and the Aquatic Center, and we just think it's a great site, and we're really hopeful that it winds up being a great project, not just for us, of course, but for the community as well. So,
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Justin S. Probably like a lot of my neighbors, my property butts right up against the aforesaid development there. When I bought my house, it was supposed to be a gated community. You could see where the pillars stood, and then finally they went down. The developer ran out of money, and that was a concern to a lot of neighbors, especially when they bought in the whole grand scheme, like there was going to be amenities. I'm the one right where Gray Street ends, right there. So that, that'd be a big concern of mine, that, everything looked good on, cardboard stock and, developer plans, and then funding runs out, and then it turns into, what we can afford at that time. Maybe the amenities don't get put in, maybe the gates don't get put in. As he stated, he has children that mine do too. We like our, low access street there. And, last thing I'd want is a gate right in front of my home where my kids are playing. When I bought my home, I thought I was in somewhat of a gated community, and through a major street would limit that. I noticed on the plan there's a house right behind mine. I kind of wish there was time that, if someone would want to buy a lot that is on the bordering surrounding area, that could be proposed. I wouldn't be opposed to actually purchasing one and maybe making a greenway out of it instead of putting a home at a fair market value. But that would be my biggest concern, is that these are supposed to be comparable to what our home values are. Things do change in developing worlds, and I would hate for that to get lessened or not go as full as planned later on down the road, to where that would be an even bigger concern for our neighborhood. So that would be my objections to some of this, because the border is pretty close. You see the stakes in my backyard. There's not much of a backyard. And the person moving in behind me or shadowing my house, I would have a concern for as well. That would be my objections to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? I can't see the middle of the group there, so have to jump up and down. That'd be great. Thank you.
My name is Bob Jennings, and I live on 1097 Branch Lane in Valley Park 5. I had a number of questions, probably it'd be best for the developer to answer rather than going through them all twice here. I gave him a copy just now. And basically, all these have to do with property values in the future for us as to what type of subdivision it really is going to be and the different things that's within it. So I would like to ask the developer to come back up and maybe go through those questions on the different sizes and so on.
I mean, what you need to do is pose your questions.
Okay.
If we have questions out of that, we'll ask.
All right.
If you get into a
No problem.
cross-examination,
No.
we could,
Don't want that.
we can,
Okay, are these buildings, these homes going to be all brick, the same as Valley Park 5? This is one of the questions. And I think he's already answered about the single family only. Is there a minimum sale price they envision of all the different houses going in there? Is there a minimum square footage that they're planning on? Is there also a planning for a strong HOA to be put in there in that system? Or all the
could you ask that again? I didn't get
strong HOA, homeowner association, to take care of it?
Can I
And
stop you a second? Because I can answer a couple of your questions.
okay,
We can't tell a developer how much their houses should cost.
well, I understand that. I just
He may have a plan, but it doesn't bind him when in this country, I don't think. And exterior of the house has to meet whatever code we have with respect to the exterior of the house, but other than that, we can't say you're gonna build all brick. We can say you can't build patio homes.
okay,
Like that, but he's already said he's gonna build single family.
right. And according to the diagram, that there will be an entryway off of Lynn on this. So if there's going to be an entryway off of Lynn, should not the developer have that in place first, so all of the construction, heavy truck traffic and so on, go through their own new subdivision and not through Valley Park 5 and destroy streets and a lot of extra noise and so on for several years to come? That's the question.
Let Garrett answer that.
The first phase of this development would include that connection to Lynn Street. The first phase of the development would
Yes.
start with that connection to Lynn Street.
And my question was, should that not be, when approved, should be installed first, or completed first, so all of that construction traffic would stay within their own new development and not coming through on Grace and other areas within our subdivision, Valley Park 5.
Likely, we would require the developer to install a construction entrance made of large stone to keep the streets clean and keep them off of existing streets. We don't want to destroy the existing streets that are there. So likely they'll enter from Lynn through a construction entrance that they make, and it'll be there for a temporary period of time until the construction ends.
My point, thank you. That's it, basically. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'm Janet Hyde, and I live on Grace in Valley Park. So, as same as Justin, we would be, have great concerns to us. But my comment I would like to make, as Mr. Hancock had talked about distracted drivers and putting it all on one street. The one street it's going to put it on would be Gray Street, which is the street we live on, and there are many children that live on that street. The other Gray Street that comes off of Main, there's even many more houses there that would impact lots of kids. It's my understanding he's going to put in about 140 homes, so that's going to be that much more traffic coming down Gray Street. The way I read this under the discussion analysis, it says the development will include privately owned and maintained streets and privately owned and maintained stormwater management, but the extension of Grace, it says, will be a public street contained with right-of-way dedicated to the public. So I feel like they're taking their development and putting most of the traffic on our development's street, which we've been on a dead-end street since it's been there probably about 15 years. From the plan, they could stay within their own development and not come on Gray Street and still have their gated community and just have their homes come out on a street, because this Gray Street is just about, 100 yards from where their planned development is. And we could connect Henry and Grace, and that would just be, wouldn't have to be a through street. Or there's other streets on the other side of Main that are all dead-end streets that could connect to it also and give more exits than just Grace. And also, which we had talked about this before too, the exit out of Grace is a very dangerous intersection because there's a hill, and when they were working on that street, my husband had emailed the county about it, and they said it was within the sight lines, but it is a very dangerous street to pull out on. So you're going to have all of this new development pulling out on that street.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak? Come forward, sir.
My name is Larry Kennedy. I live in Diamond View Estates.
Could we have your name again, please?
Larry Kennedy.
Thank you, sir.
I live in Diamond View Estates, and I live at the back of Gingerbid Court, 622 East Gingerbid Court. And my property also abuts the area where you're wanting to change the new designation. And I was reading about that, and it said on your website that it's multiple use. It doesn't say for housing. It just says it's for multiple use, and I have a problem with that. I think it's vague because really there's no reference to that definition of a PDD that relates to housing at all. I mean, and if this development, if it doesn't progress like they would like, and they decide to sell that land, who knows what might go back there if you give it a PDD designation. That's a problem, and also...
let's take them one at a time. I think Garrett can talk to you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to get
trying
the
to
right
answer
answer.
your question, or at least...
Yeah, okay.
You know,
sorry.
If this planned development district is approved, what is actually approved is this specific development plan. So if it's something that's not in this development plan, it can't happen. This, in essence, becomes the zoning from this point forward. So
I
it's
know.
actually very specific.
Does it carry with the property?
It does, yes.
Well, then if they sold it, they could put a junkyard in there.
no.
You would be, if this is approved.
read you what it says on your website.
We agree with you on
A unique zoning classification that allows an integration of multiple land uses in a specified area. It says nothing about residential, nothing.
If you read further through those regulations, what it specifies is through this process we're going through now, that the developer will present a development plan that will be reviewed by staff, planning and zoning commission, and the city council.
Yeah, but
That
what if
plan
it goes
then becomes
defunct?
The zoning.
What if it goes defunct?
This becomes.
Are they going to
permanent
sell the
zoning.
land to someone else that's going to live up to that agreement?
They would have to, or they would have to
or they would have
rezone
to
it
change
again.
it.
I don't know. That seems like a vague definition to me. You know, and the other thing that I want to discuss is that I am right against this property in my backyard. And they're talking about how their nice lots are and everything. I'll have 3 people abutting the back of my property, 3 lots, 3 different houses. And it goes, I can't show you, but it goes along here. And out in here, they have nice large lots. I've got 0.44 acres. It's not large, but down in through here, I don't even know if these lots behind me are 1/4 acre, even. And that could hurt our property value for sure. You know, I just think that they could maybe do something about, rather than putting all the large lots out here, have some of the large lots across behind our properties. Instead of just jamming a whole bunch of small lots against where it butts up against the properties where we live. I don't know if that means anything to anyone or not, but it means something to me.
Well, and I think we understand that and we hear it. This is the plan that we've been presented with, and I'm sure it's not going to satisfy everybody, and it may not satisfy us. I mean, we're going to have to decide whether or not we want to recommend approval. It obviously it doesn't satisfy you, and we understand that.
Well, you
got
know.
that loud and clear, and why? I understand you're concerned about the 4 lots that are.
Well, I don't know that it's 4, but it could be as many as 3 that abut my property.
It looks to me like it could be 3.
Yeah.
But the lot lines on the one that has the houses that I have doesn't show exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you live up here on.
Yes, that's right.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you live, so
Yeah.
that I could try and determine how many you really have.
Yeah, I would
Looks
just
like
I would
3,
just like
but-
for them to consider making them lots that compare with the addition in Diamond View along that area. That's all I would be want. You know what I'm saying? Instead of jamming small lots in there.
I will say to you that eventually this property will develop. And it'll develop into residential probably. And right now, this is the development that's in front of us. You could do a lot worse. You might be able to do better. Somebody might want the whole property and put one house in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's
Which
fine.
would be great.
If I could afford it, I would. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Schwab, and I live on East Gingerbread Court, Larry's neighbor. And I too like the field behind us. I don't know if this is a question for you or for the developer, but assuming the development goes through and all is approved, does the city set the timeline for developing a house on that lot, or does the developer?
The developer does.
Okay, so the city doesn't have anything to do with that?
No, we do not control the timing of building or development.
Okay, because when the development goes for sale, you know, I personally would like to buy some of those lots, but I don't know if the developer will be for my timeline for building. So that's the question that I had. I would appreciate it if you guys would consider the traffic and consider the property values of the other neighborhoods, because I too will have, I think, 3 houses behind me, behind my lot.
That doesn't look like you'll have any traffic, though.
No, no traffic. I'm worried about my neighbor over here, Justin.
No, and I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I'm Jim Watts. I live at 8575 West Hickory Lane, which abuts this development for 660 feet on my east property line and for 660 feet on my north property line. My concerns are somewhat different than some of these other folks. I'm thrilled to see this development come to be. I think it's beautiful. It's, you know, and we all have different reasons for what we want, and what we're thinking. But it's a beautiful development. I think it's great. I think there are some deficiencies. These folks were afforded the opportunity to have street connections in 9 different places when they started developing this. There's 9 streets that come into this, as well as utilities. Most of them they're not utilizing. There's a total of a 60-acre tract that I'm part of on the south. We are not going to have any connection in any fashion against the city. It has blown my plan. My plan was that at such time as that developed, I planned to ask to be brought into the city and to develop my tract. Can't happen. No utilities, no streets coming to me. Doesn't look to the future very good for the city of Republic in planning, in my opinion. I've developed here in town, and my development has I was forced to bring streets to the abutting property lines when I developed. I paid for streets and I paid for utilities to go up and abut the property lines for the properties that adjoin me, and that is being totally taken away from us. That's the basis of my concern.
How do you get to your property?
We have a 25-foot private easement, which if I were to decide to develop and to come into the city, I would have to have a 60-foot street, correct, coming to it, the city to meet city code. I'd have to have a 35-foot off of all my neighbors' front yards, and they don't think Christmas is that close.
They're not happy about it. Okay, private lane. I see.
But my big issue is no access to the city, no possibility of future development as I see it to the south if it's approved as drawn.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak?
I live next door to Jim, and the only 2 questions, I've had several of them answered. My name's Dave Stocker, and many of my questions have already been answered. The only thing I wanted to ask is on the zoning change, if you approve it, in the future, if things change with the developer or if there's a different developer, does this particular zoning, if you change it, allow for multifamily construction if somebody wants to put it in there?
If you change the zoning, you could change to a multifamily zoning district, or you could change to a different development plan that allowed multifamily residential uses, but you would have to go back through this same process with all of the due process afforded. So, notice
PPD,
letters, public hearings.
Including the hearing.
You'd have to go through all of this again in order to make that change.
Okay, I understand. But the one they're asking for, the PPD, does it allow multifamily? Okay. All right. You said earlier you had no control over the size of the houses. Is there a minimum that the city requires in this particular zoning? Like that 900 square foot house with a single car garage could bring everybody's value down. So is there anything protecting people living around there from having a neighborhood of small houses go in 6-7 years from now?
The city does not regulate the floor area of the homes.
Okay, so that zoning does not have that in it.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Karen Pittman, and my husband David and I live at 10009 South Schuler. We've lived there a total of 1 month. But my husband and I have built houses in Republic for 30 years, and actually he's built 30-some houses in the Valley Park subdivision through that time. Our concern are the setbacks. Because when you're looking at a side yard setback of 5 feet, understand that the lots tend to be long and narrower through here. You know, with your front yard setbacks and your backyard setbacks, for one thing, I don't want to set a precedent for other developers to come in, because it's going to make eventually a lot of people in smaller spaces. And that's a concern that we have as well. And I did have a question on the diagram on some of these. Are any of these like patio homes or anything? It was just the way they were drawn on there made it look like it, but they're not.
Correct. These are all detached.
Okay, they're all detached. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? I might mention that I'm very proud of you as a group for not repeating. Everybody's had something different to say, and it's very helpful to us.
I kind of do want to repeat. My name is Kelly Hesse. No relation to Hess, although we are neighbors. We reside my husband and I, at 941 East Grace. We are directly at the dead end, so this will have, everyone on Grace will be greatly affected by this, but we obviously have concern because we are right at the dead end road. I know traffic's been mentioned. That is, I do want to reiterate, it is a big deal because we're, like I said, we're used to a dead end road. There's nothing coming through, and this is going to open up for a very large volume. The other thing that really concerns me is property value. My husband and I downsized. Sorry, I'm very nervous. We were very purposeful when we downsized and purchased this house in Valley Park. We've been there 2 years. As we're aging, we wanted a specific subdivision. We wanted our property values to stay, solid. And we knew obviously something would be going up eventually. I mean, Republic's continued to grow through the years. When we purchased the property, we actually inquired as to who owned that property. The answer we were given was to the assumption that it was owned by Valley Park, by our subdivision. We presumed that we would be safe with what went up next to us, and then we find out that that was not the case within about 10 days of living there. My big thing is the name is obviously playing off of the marketing is going to give it the appearance that it will be to the quality that Valley Park is. In Republic, there are a lot of great neighborhoods. But we, immediately looked, where else could we move when we heard this? And there is very little option in the quality of Stony Creek or the current quality of Valley Park. And the truth of the matter is, Republic needs good sizing, they need good quality, and I completely disagree with changing what the zoning is that would allow, smaller property to be built. There's plenty of that going on. So that would be where our stance would be. My request would be, if it's going to happen, would be to at least suggest that on the roads that are currently in Valley Park, Henry and Grace, to, if it can be split in how it's zoned, keep those consistent with what is currently built on those roads in Valley Park.
Thank you.
Apparently they have at least one of these here. Apparently they seem to know. I guess it's probably going to go on to really good. Do we have something that shows that?
Hi, I'm Jim Hyde. My wife Janet spoke earlier. I live at 965 Grace Street, which is going to be shown as a major collector of the traffic on this new proposal. For that reason, I oppose the project as presented. If you look at your traffic flow on your gated communities, I think there's like 140 homes planned in this development. All those houses on the west side of the current proposal are going to be funneled out to Grace Street, which is going to go by my house. There needs to be more exits on the west side. You've got 3 or 4 houses or streets that go through there. They need to be able to exit to the west and even possibly to the north. And I know that is not on some people's agenda here, but Grace Street itself, when you exit onto Lynn Street, I think Janet pointed out that the sight lines required by the county indicated that it was okay for 30-mile-an-hour traffic. We had a city do a study of the traffic on the speed limit on Lynn Street. Their study showed that the average speed of our traveling north and south on Lynn Street was 45 miles an hour. That is a danger, and that is going to be a bad traffic pattern at that point. So I would oppose it because I think you're creating a hazard there that's going to create a lot of issues. Okay, my other concern was, I know one of the developers is Valley Park State LLC. My previous experience with this particular corporation has been that they promise a lot of things, they don't deliver very much. There's a lot of mention about going to the recreation center. We're being close to all these facilities. I don't know how they're going to access them unless they go down to Lynn or out the other way. When they say trails, that hasn't ever happened that I know of. And then the other part I think you guys are aware of and really hadn't been brought up, but the drainage situation going down to the water retention area back behind my house. I'm hoping that you have addressed that, because that is a concern of mine. So, as this project is presented, I personally am opposed to it. I do realize that that area will be developed, and I want it to be developed with nice homes, and I can live with that, because when we bought that, we realized that that was going to happen. So, that's my comments.
Are you right on Farm Road 89?
I'm sorry?
Are you right on Farm Road 89?
I'm not sure of the number of it. It's on Lynn Street.
I'm sorry?
Lynn Street, which is...
Lynn Street.
Lynn, I'm sorry. Lynn.
Okay. Am I right on it?
Yeah.
No. I'm about 4 or 5 houses to the west.
Okay. You said something about the detention, water detention.
Behind me there is a lake, a water retention area, and we have a lot of water flow that comes down through that area, and it collects in that area there.
That's already in your subdivision.
That is in our subdivision, but this is going to put a lot more into it, so I'm hoping that water problem has been addressed, because as it stands right now, we can't handle any more water coming into
I
our
see
subdivision.
2 detention areas in here and an offload, but one of the things the city does tries desperately to make sure that get an accurate engineering study to make sure what the water flow will be off the rooftops and the driveways.
Now, I'm aware there's a lot of formulas and stuff out there, and I'm assuming that the city and the developer is taking this into account. But I just wanted to reemphasize that there is a water problem at this time, and hopefully it will be made better if this is developed. But just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Do you want to?
No, sir, he had my question.
Okay, great. Somebody in the back, a couple of people in the back. Do rock, paper, and scissors and tell me who won and come up.
Fred Houston, I live not too far from Bob. I'm on the branch. The biggest problem we see with the Valley Park issue is the water retention. That pond almost overflows. When a big rain hits, as we've had this spring, one hill stays wet all the time. This was not properly developed in the first place. You can see that. So one house shouldn't even be sitting there. Because the water flowed clear across that lot, right straight through the next neighbor's land, and then goes into the pond. So we had to hire somebody to come in, put a berm in, and before they had the berm in, the neighbors, without permission, came over and dug a ditch right straight through their backyard and put a vented pipe in and covered it over. Without the guy's permission, he's moved on now. That water problem is real, and if you haven't addressed that, that's going to be a bigger problem. It's huge.
In theory.
Well, first theory didn't pan out very well.
In theory, the city, when you develop property, the property should retain its own water, and the water should not move to an adjacent property.
Yeah, well, it didn't do the job the first time, so I hope they do it the second time. And hopefully it can fix a little bit on the second time to correct some things in the first time, if you can. This is a real problem.
Thank you. Have anyone else that wants to speak?
My name is Chad Pulford. 533 East Halsey is my address. Representing the west side of this development as it looks. So one block south, actually one block north of Grace Street, as others have referenced. So my only question is, does the plan describe any detail in regards to the transition or boundaries of the gated community on that west side? So the diagram, there's basically a pretty solid gray line. I had heard rumors, and the diagram may indicate that my street is what shows a cul-de-sac, just down from where you're at, right there. Yeah. So I guess just curious if the plan really gets into the detail, and also for a gated community, does the city determine what boundaries are necessary or limitations as far as what kind of boundaries are required for a gated community?
No, we do not. The city has no regulations that would compel a developer to install any sort of boundary or as you call it, some sort of transition. When it's a like density like this, between commercial and residential, there would be a screen. But in terms of security or gating, the city has no regulations. And this development plan does not include requirements for any sort of exterior fencing or anything like that. I believe the developer may do something like that, but the plan itself does not require it.
And yes, it appears there's enough at the end of your street.
If I could just take this opportunity, one change that isn't reflected on the copies of the development plan that you have in front of you, but will be reflected by a change before this goes to City Council, is that the cul-de-sac at the end of Halsey will actually not be there, will not be constructed. Instead, the city will be working with the developer to provide turnarounds at the dead ends of the public streets that are longer than 150 feet in order to facilitate good turning movements, but not necessarily a cul-de-sac at the termination of all of those streets. If that is clear.
Does it turn around? Is that described as the width of the current street, or is it?
We haven't determined that yet. It's likely that these will be large enough for a vehicle to make a turning movement to exit back out in the opposite direction without having to enter onto anybody's driveways.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, the development looks good on paper, and currently my transition to that property is a barbed wire fence, so I think there's room for a lot of improvement there. So I was just curious if the plans really talk about that at all. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Reach the bottom of the barrel. Not in terms of quality. No more takers. All right, I'll close this public hearing now. We'll go to our discussion. Yes.
I can probably add some clarity based on some of the questions that were brought up during the public hearing portion. Some questions about concerns about the failure or potential failure of the development or the developer to implement the plan. Like I said, the city does not regulate the timing. We do work with phases to make sure adequate infrastructure is provided to each individual phase, but as far as timing, we let the developer and the market dictate those things. But to the question of a failure to implement with regard to what is shown here in the development plan, as I mentioned during the hearing, if approved, this becomes, in essence, the particular requirements of zoning for this development. So to compare it to what you would conventionally see, or just as it is now, it is R1M, which is medium density single family residential, and there are just very few requirements on a developer. If they were to purchase this and to develop it, the requirements would be that each lot would have to be at least 9,000 square feet. The right-of-way for your streets would have to be at least 50 feet wide. The street itself, 28 feet curb to curb. And otherwise, you'd have to manage your stormwater. But it would not be as particular as what you see here. This development plan, in essence, is what will get implemented regardless of how fast or slow the development occurs or regardless of who owns it. To do something different would require a rezone. And that does include the bulk dimensions that you see here, is the layout of the transportation infrastructure. The development regulations do allow for some adjustments during construction, as are always necessary, but in essence, this plan becomes a particular requirement, so there are probably more obligations on the developer that you have in a PDD than you would in just our conventional zoning district. So there's some flexibility in how it's structured, but once it's approved, it's set. And it has to be done that way, or else a rezone or an amendment to this has to be approved, and it would go through the same process again and go to the City Council for that approval. A lot of questions about what sort of construction materials, minimum lot prices, things like that. Again, those are things that the city does not regulate. Those things are normally regulated privately by a homeowners association through covenants and restrictions, but the city does not regulate those particular things within this development. Address the thing about Gray Street being a collector class thoroughfare. That was mentioned several times during the hearing as an issue of concern. Gray Street was identified as a future collector class thoroughfare during the adoption of the city's current transportation plan back in 2006. So I want to make sure that it's understood that whether it's this developer or a different developer, or whether it's this density or another density, it is a requirement of that major thoroughfare plan, a requirement of the state statutes that whatever that developer is and whatever their plan is, that they implement our major thoroughfare plan, which shows that Gray Street is a collector that will collect traffic from adjoining neighborhoods and then carry that traffic to the closest arterial streets, which in this case would be Lynn Avenue or Main Street to the west. So that's the purpose of these collectors, is so that you're not routing every other neighborhood's traffic through the other neighborhoods necessarily, but that it's all collected by one particular street and then routed to arterials that way. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that Gray Street being the way that it is through this development is not necessarily a design element that was desired by the developer. It is in essence a requirement of the city's plans and the city's regulations that that street sort of exists in the way that it's shown there. No, the public street, no public street in this development, or no public street anywhere is allowed to have a gate. That would in essence change the character of the street from being public. Any public street has to be accessible by the public. So every street that has a gate on it within this development would be privately owned and maintained. But Gray Street would be a public street that would be open to public traffic. I heard the concern addressed by one about the width of setbacks. So just the city's normal setbacks in this zoning district would be 6 feet to the property line in a side yard from the drip edge of the building, or for where the water would drip off of the eave. What they've proposed is to shrink that 1 foot to 5 foot, which would be the bare minimum that the city would accept. If you get close, let's say it's the bare minimum, but if you go beyond that 5 foot mark, there are fire code requirements that kick in that require you to have expensive fire rated construction. So this would be 1 foot narrower than the conventional regulations, just to draw the comparison there. Stormwater management, as Ransom mentioned during the hearing, the city's regulations require that each individual development analyzed by a registered professional engineer what the stormwater runoff from all the impervious surface will be, and then to make sure that that water is basically collected and detained and then released at a rate that would be no faster than it currently is now. I appreciate everybody who brought forward existing stormwater concerns, so that we're aware of those. We may have some further questions about that, so that we can make sure that those are addressed as we move into actual engineering and design. So we may have more questions for you on that at a future time. But in essence, I hope that gives a sense of how the city regulates stormwater management. That's a good point. So in this zoning district, the conventional setback in the front and rear would be 25. This development plan allows for that to be 15 feet. So in essence, 10 feet closer to the front, 10 feet closer in the rear.
May I ask how you are going to address the failure to access the property south along
Let's talk about the failure of utilities to connect to the south. So generally the city does require access so that we're not landlocking properties in essence. And we do that for undeveloped property. What we have here is immediately south of this is what the city would look at, probably view as developed property, not property that's, so there is already some infrastructure, although it's a private lane, there's some infrastructure to serve the existing residential development that is there. They have private water and wastewater facilities that serve those homes. And so the city's regulations don't necessarily say that we must then provide public infrastructure to that particular already in essence developed area. That's not to say that it would be prohibited from those properties to connect to public infrastructure. It's just not a situation where the city would bring that infrastructure to those boundaries. It just would be low probability of probably making those connections in the future, considering that it is developed already, although I do understand the development is more of a rural density, larger tracts than you would normally see in an urban setting or a suburban setting like the city of Republic. But that's not to say that the city would not ever provide some level of infrastructure to those properties. It may have to come from a different area.
Any questions? Go ahead. I mean, this isn't a question and answer, but we'll do it. You know, that's what we're making it, so go ahead.
This was the first I had heard explained that Grace had to be, like you said, that through street, and so I can understand that has to happen. But my concern is maybe when the city planned that back in 2006, there were all sorts of dead-end streets, the ones you were just talking about, that you're going to put a turnaround at the end, that I'm sure were planned to go through. This is going to bring a lot heavier traffic on Grace Street than I think what we planned for in 2006, because it's going to be a gated community in Grace. Other than Miller, Grace will be the only connecting street now. So even besides this subdivision, we're going to be pulling a lot of traffic from other subdivisions. And you got school buses that will be going through. I don't know how to do it for that.
Go ahead.
So the city, in its transportation planning, we only plan what we refer to as major thoroughfares, those being a collector class or higher. We do not plan the arrangement of local class thoroughfares, which would be, in this case, Grace and Lynn are the only major thoroughfares that we have. So those are the only ones that we plan. So in this case, Grace is the only street that is planned by the city in this context. There are some other dead ends into this property. In fact, I would say that there's an inordinately high number of dead ends into this particular development. Those are not streets that the city, however, plans or has included in their major thoroughfare plan to require to be made to go through.
And those things probably, that they were dead-ended, at least some of them, probably as a result of the determination of the plat at the time we were doing that process years ago. So, depending on how long ago these pieces of property were developed.
I heard a question about Miller. Miller is actually much higher. It's a higher class. It's a secondary arterial, so it's designed to capture traffic from other collectors. No, Grace will just collect that residential traffic from adjoining neighborhoods, whereas Miller is collecting from a variety of different collectors in essence. So all of the neighborhoods in a much larger area are all being funneled to Miller. The other thing about arterial streets is they get you to certain destinations like the community center or to other primary arterials where you can then leave Republic and go to Springfield or to the west or other places like that. So those are Miller is designed to carry a much larger volume of traffic and does and will carry a much larger volume of traffic than Grace will.
I guess that's my concern. I think we'll have that heavy volume of traffic and the roads won't be made to carry it.
Sure. This would be a lower class of, there's a couple of ways you can design and build collector streets. This would be the lower, it would be low on that sort of scale. It would only be 2 lanes. It would be the typical still right-of-way. of a local class street. It just would not function as a local class street. I don't want to give the impression that it would carry the same as a local class thoroughfare. It would likely carry more traffic than your typical local class street that was within a normal neighborhood.
Has there been consideration given to fire protection and emergency services going into this one entrance gated community?
Yeah, so that's one thing we consider every time we look at a development like this is how to get emergency vehicles in and out of the area, and also how to get them in and out of gated streets. So every gate will be affixed with a type of access that the fire department will be able to access conveniently so that they can get in and provide those emergency services and also get back out.
I can tell you for a fact that this commission is always concerned about that. And whenever we see fire protection, whenever we see knuckles on the end of little streets like there are some in here, we want to make sure that the fire apparatus can turn around. Gentlemen? Take a motion or?
Actually,
So you got a
Grace is the collector.
Yes. Speak loud enough so that.
I'm sorry, Grace is the collector, so I assume we're gonna have a gate here, a gate here, a gate here. Okay, is that actually determined in the plan? I missed something.
Location of gates are not determined.
Okay. So we know that this is a public road. Grace is.
Correct.
Everything else is private?
Correct.
Okay. So fair assumption that there could be gates in all of those locations.
Correct. They
No,
don't have to
I
place
just
gates, but they
want
like
to clarify that in my mind. To the fire protection issue, how are you going to get turnaround at the end of Harvey, Halsey, and Lee? What's going to allow a fire truck to turn around?
They're already having to do that.
That's an
I
existing.
understand they do already, but
That's an existing issue that certainly the fire department has noticed and considered. It's something that they have to do now. We're hoping to facilitate that to be better than it is. I don't think we get to an ultimate, I don't think we're going to get to where you turn around the biggest truck, but that's not likely the truck they take in there anyways. So like I said, it's a situation they face now. It won't be any different afterward. They're able to navigate it now. I don't drive the truck, so I want to pretend to tell you how they do that. But they do get in and out now, so.
Well, one of the benefits of this plan is that Grace will be a better fire system up and down. You won't have two dead ends at either side of Grace.
That's true.
Not that that's a big come-on point for you all at Grace.
if the zoning stayed as it is, would some of these other streets that dead end into that property, would they have probably been continued on as a street through there?
Not likely for a couple of reasons. Probably the most important being that those are not streets included in our major thoroughfare plan, so the city lacks authority to require those to be extended. You only need to provide public street access to the lots you want to create for development, and if you can do that without extending some of those streets, you would be able to do so. I think the other reason that it's unlikely that they all get extended is the reason I mentioned earlier, is that there's an abnormally high number of dead ends into this property, that if you were to make all of those connections, or be required to make all of those connections, it would be very expensive to develop all of that infrastructure. And you would be, of course, funneling, traffic in a lot of different ways, which isn't as efficient as funneling it to a collector to get it to the arterials and get it out. Exactly.
So the bottom line is, eventually this is going to probably go into residential. Because that's all it's going to be able to go there. And Grace is going to be the major street, whatever plan that they go with. And the rest of them will be dead ends as they are. And so that's not going to change whether it stays as it is or gets moved to the new one.
Correct.
bringing in anything off of Farm Road 89 is not an option?
It would be an option, but being a secondary arterial, we prefer as few intersections as possible in close proximity.
Is there any and again, I'm not out this direction that much, but is there any consideration of three-way stop there or anything besides just a stop for Grace and then going on out to Lynn Street?
No, I don't believe we have reached that level of detail. You're talking about a three-way stop within the development on Grace?
On Lynn Street there, where Grace hits Lynn, because that's where traffic's going to be coming in and out of there. A lot of this traffic's going to, it's either going to go there toward Main Street, correct?
Right. So that's already a controlled intersection.
Okay. What's there now then?
I believe it's just a stop sign.
So there is a stop sign for Lynn Street, or no? So you're saying there's a stop sign for Grace? We know that.
Yeah,
but there's nothing on Lynn that there's not going to be. Okay.
Yeah, the traffic would have to warrant us to stop the traffic on Lynn itself because it's an arterial and that's highly unlikely.
High level. Okay.
Rather, we would probably do some improvements at some future point to make it safer, rather than we would have actually stop traffic on that road. In the first, I only had the exact count in the very first phase. And do you recall what the smallest one was, Karen? I think by the time, even though it allows for smaller lots, most of those lots were actually within the range of what would be an R1H or an R1N in the typical zoning arrangement. They were just sort of skinnier and longer rather than. Yeah, and the developer may know better than I do. I don't recall any of them being smaller than 6,000. There may be one or two.
I was just wondering why.
You see,
he's given us
some of these may approach 6,000. The rest are 8, 9, 10, 11. These are the smallest lot in the entire development. Streets. Yeah. Most of the lots actually end up being relatively large, but they are narrow.
Now, he told us earlier 2.7 per acre, but I know that was an average because he's having different sizes, correct? So that's what his average lot size is. Going to fall within 2.7 lots per acre, right?
Yes. And the average, to give you a sense of context, the average R1N development in the Republic is 2.4, 2.5.
What is the smallest lot that he could put on there?
Yes, right. So that's actually the max. You're right. I don't think the math actually works out. 2.7 is the ceiling. What their actual density ends up being is probably lower. Try and do that math. If there's in the first phase, it actually I don't think is 2.7. Maybe 2.3.
What's the smallest lot they could be? What is the size of the smallest lot then on this particular zoning?
If it were 50 feet wide, 5,000.
5,000 square feet is the smallest lot.
That's 4,500 would be the 40 minimum, and that's if it's 50 feet wide. That's if it's 50 feet wide and only 90 feet deep. There's potentially lots that size in this. No, I don't believe there are any lots that size in this. It's possible, but there aren't any lots planned.
Not any lots planned, but once he gets it approved, he could drop them back down to that.
You could shift some lot lines so that you had one at 4,500 and then another one will obviously get larger, but the lot count could change, but you still got to hit 2.7. even if you squeeze in a couple.
Okay, so he's gotta have at least 2 points, he can only go 2.7 per acre. They can divide them up differently, but that's what it's gotta be.
Yep. And the common areas, the green space, the stormwater management, that would all have to stay.
When the community originally envisioned, there was a trade-off. You're getting to do this, and in exchange, you're getting the city back. What is that?
That, in this case, are the additional pedestrian facilities, and in essence, a development that is probably better suited to the character of the development here in this particular area than you would maybe otherwise see in just a conventional R1 sidewalks on both sides. And the common areas, there's additional common areas that would otherwise not be there. They're not outlined very well, but adjoining some of the intersections, there are designated landscaped common areas.
Speaking to Mr. Watt's concern, where Grace is down there close, is that a potential area where an intersection could be drawn up and tied into that material?
Could be.
Because it's not far from the property line. It doesn't appear to be.
Given the proximity, there would be nothing to prohibit an intersection. Right.
Other questions? Everybody's looking down.
I have a question. Things can change just because it's, a collector's street now doesn't mean it cannot be changed. We're still in the planning stages. For Grace, why can't you just find another collector road and redesign your plots and leave Grace alone and find something different?
That decision was made in 2006 to make Grace a collector.
And you can't amend that decision?
Sure.
Andrew,
I can address that. The problem is now that we facilitated probably close to 75% of it. So to go back, to go that, I felt was a change. And to the body connection, it's probably
So if you're thinking of people's lives here, you got to consider that. Homes and you're planning something different now, and that can still be changed when you design. You can find a different road, different collector road, south of there.
For purposes of our minutes, could we have your name, because you didn't speak earlier? Ma'am?
I'm sorry.
All right, gentlemen. Other questions or motion? Don't be shy.
I move that we recommend the approval of the plan development district and company Valley Trail Development Plan for approximately 66 acres, identified as, to read these parcels? 881729400031 and 881729100013 in the city of Newcastle.
Thank you. Here, second?
I'll second it.
All right. Before we vote, I want to tell the folks that are here, this is merely a recommendation to the city council. And the process continues at city council, no matter what our there'll be a recommendation, but they'll have hearing too.
They will have the first reading and then the second reading 2 weeks later.
All right. But
this is the public.
Okay. Sorry. Used to be, you could go to have a hearing at city council. Sorry. All right. Any discussion on the motion? The motion is to recommend. No discussion, call the roll.
Brent Smellis,
Aye.
Alan Dixon. Shane Grooms. Tony Mitchell.
Aye.
George North.
No.
Ken Sawyer.
I'm gonna go nay on.
I didn't hear what you.
Nay.
3-3.
What do we do?
I'm out. Anybody know any good songs?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Not quite yet.
I think that's what I was looking for earlier. Oh, let's see, what was that second one? I forgot what it was. Let's see here.
Yes, everybody that has a vote.
Gary's a non-voting member.
Everyone that has a vote.
There's currently a tie, so Garrett is investigating what the next move is.
Jerry is not a member of the commission. He's what do you call it? Liaison. Thank you. I was trying to give you the opportunity to make it even sound better. And
I guess on this, we're gonna, I mean, if you do nay on this up here, you're really gonna be probably no on both of those too, aren't you? I would think so. I mean, my problem is I don't know what's in the line, you know, it's changing. But I don't, if people's got big lots around it, I don't think y'all can stick a bunch of little lots in the center of the big lots, bigger lots. You know, keep it about the same, and then I wouldn't have a problem with it.
similar to Solomon. See, I've actually too much houses on we looked at this. It was like 12 of them. I was like, oh no.
Elm Street got turned down.
That was turned down, 4-2. That was 4-2. Dan?
That was the recommendation that's going to be presented to City Council. And I still need So the Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended denial at this point, but the City Council will make that decision.
Sorry, that probably one I should have announced. I think everybody was one. Well, I was kind of counting. But you probably didn't hear. It went pretty fast. That's what I thought. That's 4-2. Against.
My dad
There's turkeys back there too.
Go gay or nay on that? Did you go gay or nay on that last one? What my concern is, here's what I say. It's going to happen anyway. If you keep the lots, it ought to be consistent with what's around it. That's what I say. Is that your thought, or you have something else that you want?
No, they have to actually be here and vote yes or no.
Remember, water talking about running all the
You would have to watch it on YouTube, and it was over an hour.
Is the water running to the south or to the north? It runs to the north, but they should have to. I don't see. Well, they've got an area right here, but they're going to have to put an detention at some point to stop that water. And they are putting it out here because the other detention is like right here.
After due consideration by legal counsel, we have determined that the vote currently is 3-3, 3-4, 3 against. And after due consideration, that does not constitute an approval or a recommendation to approve. So the recommendation from the commission will be to not approve, and it goes to council. It'll go to council anyway on that recommendation. So, are there any other motions, George?
Yeah. Adjourn.
All right.
I'll second it.
Call roll, please.
Could you clarify too for everybody which one was passed and which one wasn't? I just had a question again, Joe. All three.
Before, just wait. I had a question while we had a break about the votes on all of these. The first one was approved. We're recommending. The second one, the parcel on Elm, we voted 4-2 against, so it'll go as a not recommended. And this one's over 3-3, and so it will go as not recommended. Before she calls the roll on the adjournment, I want to tell everybody I really deeply appreciate the civility that you had for our program and our meeting tonight. Everybody was very cordial. I appreciate that. It could have been a different way sometimes, and I've been doing this for a long time with planning and zoning. It's a very high-paid position. All of us have, and we appreciate we're citizens of the city just like you all, and we appreciate you coming out, having an interest, sharing your concerns. Call the roll, please.
Ken Sawyer,
Aye.
George North,
Aye.
Tony Mitchell, Tim Grooms, Alan Dixon, Ransom Ellis.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you again.